We show up for other people and we're all ready and so gung-ho about helping other people. But when it comes to us, to ourselves, like it's so hard to ask for that help. And when you are someone who is struggling with depression or substance use disorder or PTSD or even suicidal ideation, that's the last thing you want to talk about or say it out loud, especially to your coworkers or even your family members, right? Because, you're afraid of the repercussions, afraid of like losing your job, afraid of getting a desk job, right? Or having that diagnosis that, oh, that person's depressed or that person suffers from anxiety.
Before we begin, we want to issue a trigger warning. Today's episode includes a discussion of suicide and suicidal ideation. We understand that these topics can be difficult to hear for some listeners, and we want to make sure everyone is aware before continuing. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts or behaviors, please know that you're not alone. There are resources available to you, including the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is available 24/7 at 1-800-273-TALK. Hi, I'm Kira Yakubov, licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Heal Your Roots Wellness Practice. Every episode, we talk with a professional from the mental health field to learn more about their approaches and specialties, and also their journey of becoming a therapist. In this podcast, we'll uncover a deeper look at the world of therapy from new perspectives. You'll meet the therapists of Heal Your Roots Wellness Practice and trusted colleagues from the community tackling mental well-being. We're your go-to network for practical and professional insight in mental health. Subscribe for new episode releases every other Wednesday. I'm so thrilled to have our guest Majet Reyes on for today. She is a psychotherapist and owner of Resilient Mindworks. Majet, thank you so much for being on today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to connect with you again. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know you do a lot of work in the community. You have a lot of organizations. You're a therapist. You have phenomenal experience. So I'm really excited to hear your story for today. So I always like to start with diving into how did you become a therapist? Like, can you walk us through that journey of how that started for you?
Yeah, definitely. So this is actually my second career. I was a paramedic for 13 years before. And before I was a paramedic, I was going to nursing school. And then, before that, obviously, I was in high school and hoping to be in the medical field. And even before that, if we go way, way back, like I was born and raised in the Philippines. So I came in the United States when I was 16 and saw my parents struggle through, starting over. And then the struggle of like being new to a country and then I went to 4 different high schools. And all that transitions and all that adjustment that I experienced being an immigrant at 16 years old. And then navigating my way into college. And then when I was in college, I was going to go for nursing school. And then 9/11 happened. So 9/11, September 11, 2001. Yeah. And then I saw, we all saw the burning buildings, New York, and I saw these people running into the burning buildings, and they were in uniform. Obviously, there were firefighters and there were cops. And I was wondering, like, who were the other group of people going in there? And I was like, I definitely don't want to be a firefighter. I definitely don't want to be a cop. But what is that other group of people there? And I was like, they're paramedics. And, nowadays, we can just Google paramedics and know what it is. But back then, like, I went into a phone book and checked out paramedic schools. And I found a paramedic school, went into EMT school first. So that's like a 2 to 3 months program, and then 2 years of paramedic school. So there's a difference between EMTs and a difference between paramedics. So,
good to know.
Yeah. So I did that hoping that my goal is to retire as a fire service paramedic, right? Like, it's like giving back to this country that I have adopted, that American dream, that a lot of immigrants are aiming for. So I became a paramedic, hoping that I'm going to retire as a paramedic. And then I was assaulted by my coworkers when I was working as a paramedic. And then that kind of like helped me go through the healing journey. That was the start of it. But it took like another 10 years before I started that healing journey, right? So if we fast forward, oh gosh, more than 10 years after that event happened, I became a mom. And when became a mom, I was like, okay, well, I'm working as a paramedic. The hours is awful, right? The work is rough. And, and I have this daughter, and all I meant for my daughter is to be happy. And like, how am I going to, ask her to be, or want her to be happy if I'm miserable, right? And I thought it was my job was making me miserable, right? With everything else in my life. That my focus was work. I'm like, I need to change jobs, right? And I didn't know what I should become. I'm like, maybe I should try to go back to nursing school or become a PA or become, a doctor. But that's like not really my goal. But the PA and nursing school are the two options for paramedics. Those are the two obvious options that they usually go for. If they're tired of becoming a paramedic. So I applied to nursing school and PA school, and I was rejected for theirs, right? And I was like, okay, I know for a fact that I don't want to be a paramedic anymore, right? But I also am not sure what I should go for. And only in my mind, nursing or PA school. So I asked, right, like I prayed, right? Like I'm not very religious, but I'm spiritual in a way that, like I believe in a higher power. And I'm like, yo, you tell me what you want me to do. How do you want me to serve? Like, how do you want me to serve your people? A few days later, I got a postcard from Philadelphia University, which is Jefferson now. And it says Community and Trauma Counseling Program. It's new. It's newer. I was in the second cohort of that program. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to check it out. And I went to Philly U for my bachelor's. So I'm like, I'll check it out, right? I love this school. That made it time for me to get my master's. So I went to the orientation, fell in love with the teachers, fell in love with the other students. And I'm like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here, right? Not knowing that I got my own stuff. So I was learning about trauma. I was learning about counseling and realizing that I got a lot of work to do. My own inner healing. So as I was going through the program, becoming a counselor, a trauma counselor, I was going through my own healing as well. And that's when I started looking for therapists and processing my traumas, my trauma from the assault, trauma from, becoming a mom, trauma of becoming, an immigrant, and then the childhood traumas that, that were never processed at all. They weren't even acknowledged, right, when I was growing up. And then I just fell in love with the field of counseling. And that's how I became a trauma therapist. And it's been 7 years now. And I love, Kira, I love what I do. That's what I love talking about. It's like self-love. It's like taking care of yourself so you can continue doing what you love. And for me, that's what I do. I need rest. I'm going to rest. I'm going to give myself love because I love what I do so much. I want to be my best when I take care of my clients. Right? So Ryan, long story short. Like that's my story. I love your story. How I became a counselor. Yeah.
Wow. That is inspiring from the beginning to the end. I'm also an immigrant, but I immigrated when I was very young. So to know as a teenager coming in, I mean, that's its own journey. Then you're going through all these experiences of being a paramedic, like life and death situations, and then having that feeling of a crossroad. It sounds like you had a lot to figure out, and very brave of you to, allow yourself to see what comes to you, like trusted and, prayed and manifested. And then it literally showed up on your doorstep to say, hey, try this out. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really interesting because my mindset was not there. My mindset was about, I need to take control, right? Back then, my mindset was all about, like I got to control it. I got to do. And I had so many maladaptive coping mechanisms. Like I didn't know they were maladaptive back then, right? But it was normal. Like they were normal and they were just part of my culture as Filipino American and part of the culture of American culture, and also culture of EMS, emergency medical services. Like, I was working a lot. I was drinking and exercising a lot. Right. And those were like just part of the culture. And I was working, not understanding that, if you really want to make some changes and start a healing journey, sometimes you just got to stay still. Right. And just be and let go of control, but that really took me a very, very long time to understand. And I'm still learning. Yeah.
Sure. I appreciate being vulnerable and sharing that insight. I didn't know all of those ins and outs of that and how that came up. I mean, grad school is incredible, right? I mean, to be able to heal and learn all of this, like we go in trying to help other people and it's like a mirror to the face of all the work that we have to do, which I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of how we choose who we're going to work with. Is it's almost like simultaneously helping ourselves heal while we're helping someone in a somewhat of a similar way or some relatability in that. So it makes sense that you've been really focusing on first responders because that's a lot to carry for anybody. Wow.
Yeah.
And so can you share a little bit about kind of specifically the unique struggles that a first responder might have and how that shows up in therapy or what they bring to therapy when they do decide to go?
It's very interesting, right? Like, so when I started my practice, like I really focused on helping first responders and medical professionals. Like having been in the field, like there's so much stigma when it comes to mental health, right? We're helpers, right? We're saviors. And, I put air quotes there because, we go into work knowing that we're going to save someone. We're going to help, right? If not save, but help someone, right? That's part of the job. But when it comes to us asking for help, right? And needing to be saved. And again, quote unquote, it's looked down upon, right? And it's like, it's a culture that glorifies self-neglect, right? And we put a badge of honor when we're neglecting ourselves. And we show up for other people and we're all ready and so gung-ho about helping other people. But when it comes to us, to ourselves, like it's so hard to ask for that help. And when you are someone who is struggling with depression or substance use disorder or PTSD or even suicidal ideation, that's the last thing you want to talk about or say it out loud, especially to your coworkers or even your family members, right? Because, you're afraid of the repercussions, afraid of like losing your job, afraid of getting a desk job, right? Or having that diagnosis that, oh, that person's depressed or that person suffers from anxiety, or even not recognizing that the numbing, activities that we do, such as drinking, right? That's very accepted in the culture, drinking. And you want to be part of the team, part of the group, after work, you go out and drink. And that's part of the culture, and not understanding that, oh, I'm actually using this to numb and not process the emotions or the feelings or the traumas that I see, or experience when I go into work, and not knowing that that's actually a problem. It's a disorder, substance use disorder. And also not realizing that a lot of first responders, actually 85% of first responders have PTSD, because going into work and meeting people on the worst day of their lives, right? A lot of times, like the worst day of their lives, and you're coming in and you were helping them, in one of the days that, when they're having a bad day. Either there was an accident or somebody, their loved one is dying or death, and having to compartmentalize everything that you just witnessed so you can go on to the next call, right? And they become really good, right? First responders become really good at compartmentalizing because they have to, right?
Sure, that's part of the job.
Exactly, it is part of the job. And then, so that you can go ahead and help. Right? And calls can come in back to back, and not having the time to take a breather and process and feel, right? What just went on in your body, in your mind, right, and in your heart. Like, you're aware of this trauma is not necessarily the actual event, right? It's the felt experience. For the general public, it's like that experience, right? That traumatic event that we have, the big T's, could be probably 1 out of 5. But with first responders, it's like 3 out of 5 first responders, right? Experience that, witnessing a traumatic event, and then having that trauma that they carry in their bodies, that self-experience that they weren't able to process because they had to go to the next call. So, and then
that's every day.
And that's every day that they go into work.
Holy shit.
So, right, it's something that needs to be talked about more. A lot of the first responders, a lot of my clients who come to me, it's usually, or my significant other ask me to go see a therapist, right? Or, I'm always fighting with my significant other, or my children. I don't have a real connection with my children, or I'm just burnt out and I don't want to go to work anymore. Right, but I need my job, and not realizing that they could be struggling with depression or anxiety or CPTSD, like complex trauma, like complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Those are some of the things that I see a lot in my practice, and some of the struggles that comes to my office. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered it.
Okay.
Wow. I mean, it seems almost inevitable, right? At some point that if you're a paramedic or you're an EMS worker, that you will experience trauma, depression, anxiety, numbing, right? Like it almost seems inevitable. Like we're human beings, right? Some people have this happen maybe once, twice in their life, and this is someone's job that they go in every single day. So I can't imagine having to hold so much of that in our body with nowhere to go or to be acknowledged, and then wake up and do it again the next day.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we can't blame them if they use substance, right?
No, I mean, it makes sense. I would. I mean, just thinking about that now, like you have to find a way to manage through it. And if there's no space or time, and if it's stigmatized, I mean, it seems like the options are pretty slim.
Yeah. Yep. Talking about it, it's like, it's stigmatized. You can talk about everything else. Like, they talk about politics and race and religion and all that stuff. But when it comes to emotions, it's the F word nobody wants to talk about, right? And I'm just like, and I tell my clients this, I'm like, I'm not going to force you in the beginning of our work together. Part of your healing journey with me is being comfortable with this F word. And they're like, what F word? And I'm like, feelings. And then like, like it's the emotions. There's something about emotions or feelings that is also stigmatized in our culture, right?
Yeah.
It's like, even that word, and I don't like this term when they say, oh, you're so emotional. Like, what's wrong with emotions? Right? It's such a sin to be emotional. Like, your emotions are not wrong. No. It's like a fire alarm for you to pause and reflect, okay, why am I feeling this way? Right? And being comfortable with knowing that you have to pause and feel and not judge your feelings, right? And actually give it space so that it can pass, right? Okay, I'm going to pause and I'm feeling really sad right now. I just saw a kid died, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's horrible. And then you have to compartmentalize that. And so you can go on to the next call. But what if that caused another death? Or maybe not. Let's not even say it's another death. It's just a car accident, a fender bender. Now you're going into that call pissed off, right? Like, oh, you called us for this, right? You just called AAA. And it's like, you didn't get to process that sadness, right? But then you're comfortable with feeling anger, because that's something that's kind of normalized too and okay, right? That aggression, the fight mode. But when it comes to feeling sad, right, or confused, or even anxious, anxiety has, shows up in many different ways, but not being able to understand that and judging it and shaming those feelings, it's not helpful, and my work with first responders is really helping them understand their feelings, becoming aware of them, and being comfortable with that F word. Right? So they can talk about it, express how they feel, so they'll know what they need, right? If they continue to suppress these emotions, these feelings, then how would they know what they need? How would we know, right? If we're just going glaring and suppressing the feelings because we're so uncomfortable with feeling, then how are we going to be aware of what we need in our lives, right? I'm going to digress.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's no time or space to reassess or feel anything. It's just kind of continuously going through the motions. You know, it's interesting because these are some of the bravest people. I mean, I consider this super brave. Like, I'm inspired by the fact that you did that and went through that whole process. But like, how brave that this is your job every day and you go into danger, physical danger, and then the emotional internal part that can't necessarily, I mean, it can hurt us, obviously, but not in the same way that physical harm can get us, that's more feared. Right. And that as it compiles on and on, I can imagine like, well, if I open the lid, who knows how much is going to come out. I can even imagine like people who want to start talking about feelings are scared how much is going to come through and if they're able to manage or control them.
Unfortunately, because not knowing that there is a safe space to express those feelings and emotions, and that fear of how much of that, like what you're saying, how much of that is going to come out. And that's so scary. Like they don't know how that would look like. And what we don't know, it's very scary. So unfortunately, there's a high rate of suicide in first responders. And it's the reality, it's the truth. It's something that, you know, these departments, the organizations are not really putting a lot of effort into looking into this, right? And if we had provided a safe space or normalized talking about feelings, especially sadness, then we could have prevented those suicides.
Yeah, it's really heavy. And it's a shame to think about the people who take care of us, right? When we need to be taken care of, when the community needs that help, they show up, but they're not being helped, right? Like there isn't this already built into that job or to that system and that structure to make sure that they're taken care of consistently moving forward instead of having to be very stoic and keep it moving and not be impacted because the role is hero and strong and you have to hold it together for everyone else so they can be sad, so they can feel vulnerable.
Well, I love that you brought that up because that idea of being a hero, right? Like a superhero. Superheroes are busy. Superheroes, you know, are blue. Superheroes, you know, don't talk about their feelings. But again, like these are human beings we're talking about, right? First responders are human beings and they do have feelings, just like a lot of us, just like all of us, right? And you brought that up. Like, I love that you brought that up. Like, we want this first responder and these medical professionals, right, to take care of themselves and to love themselves because they are the people who's going to be protecting and saving our communities, right?
Yeah.
And if we don't take care of them and, you know, and we don't see them with empathetic eyes, there's going to be a lot more hate. They're spreading hate, we're spreading hate, and then we're not understanding each other. I hope, and, you know, if, you know, like it will be normalized for organizations to promote self-love, right? Self-love, self-care, for first responders so that they're not burned out and then so that they're not depressed and they're not anxious or always in survival mode, and they can show up for our communities who need them with a lot of love and really ready and willing and full of compassion, showing up in these communities and helping out, right?
Sure. Absolutely. And I can imagine, you know, if there's a lot of stigma you're getting within your group of people in your organization, and then when you go out to help, your job is literally to help people and you're getting negative feedback or this negative association with what you're doing while you're trying to help, I can see that anger coming through, right? Like that all trickles together, right? It's all part of a system and it all plays a part. And so I love that you talk about this community, and I know you're so involved in the community. And I love you have this phrase on your website. It's like bridging the gap with empathy with the community. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit and how to bring that a little bit closer?
One of my dreams, right, in my professional life, to build this empathy bridge to close the gap between first responders and communities that they serve. Like, so I'm a brown, you know, like immigrant female, right? And part of my identity is like, I'm a former first responder and I understand, you know, like, what goes on like inside that life, right? But then also as a brown individual and being a member of the community, I also understand the struggles and the traumas, right? And of living in my community and living in the community, you know, as a brown female, like immigrant. And I feel like, you know, there's a need for us to understand each other, right? These two groups. for the first responders to understand and know the joys, the challenges, and the struggles of being a member of communities, especially the communities of brown and Black individuals, right? And then also the community, Black and brown, to see with empathetic eyes the joys and the struggles and the challenges of being a first responder. And when we understand each other, we can't help but, start building that bridge of like connecting, right? And connection is our deepest longing and our biggest fear, right? As human beings, right? It's like, we are wired for connection, but then also we're so afraid of connecting with people who seem to be so different from us. But in reality, we're not that different, right?
Yeah.
And I wish that someday, and I have, I've sent proposals for this, and I've said, like, I did presentations of like, this building this empathy bridge between first responders and the communities, because it would be nice to live in a world wherein, first responders and people in the community understands each other. We can live in a world wherein our offsprings, right, the future, can live a life wherein they can trust each other. And with that comes love, right?
I love the passion you have for this. No, really, it's so needed and it's so heartfelt and it's so important, because I think what you're talking about is huge, right? This takes a community. It takes a lot of people to be vulnerable and willing to hear other people's side. And the tough part is when there is so much trauma, right, within the community and first responders who are dealing with vicarious trauma, but their own, we isolate. Like the last thing we want to do is be vulnerable and reach out and feel closer. So it's like another block, another layer kind of getting in the way of that. Man, that sounds like really hard work.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, the vulnerability part. Walking around communities, like we really love our resilience, right? Like we've been through a lot and then we're strong. And then when you look at the first responders, like, it's like also they're very resilient, right? Bouncing back pretty quickly to go to the next call. But then when it comes to being vulnerable, it's super scary. But sometimes we do need to take that step, right? To be vulnerable, because with vulnerability comes connection, right? And then when we're deeply connected, then there's intimacy. With intimacy, love can grow. So vulnerability it's a hard but necessary step that first responders can start practicing.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because it is, from vulnerability comes everything else, right? Is that trust, the respect, the understanding, the empathy, and then we can start to grow and make moves from there, and hearing all these different perspectives. I'm just so amazed by your work. I'm like thinking about it like day to day, how much that would be. And so when you are working with individuals who are first responders and are in these circumstances, how do you help them look at self-love and self-care in a way that works for their schedules and their life, right? Because that's going to look a little bit different from someone who just has a regular 9-to-5 in front of a computer and wants to take care of themselves.
It's interesting, right? Like that term self-care and self-love is like hashtag self-care, right? And automatic, like their mind goes into mani-pedi massages spa day. Right? No. That can be self-care, right? Like people can find joy in that, but let's figure out what self-care is for you. And it's more on like what brings you joy. And what does that mean? And sometimes even that question of like, what activities bring you joy is something that they struggle with. Because a lot of times they don't have the time to think and do things that bring them joy, or they forgot it, right? They knew it when they were, a child, or when they were younger. And then as they start, living as grown-ups, it's suppressed because you're busy surviving. And then being in survival mode becomes normal and familiar. And I ask them to pause. Right? That's the first thing we practice. Like, let's pause. And just being able to sit for a few minutes, it's better than nothing, than expecting to have a full day of spa day. Right? It's like, because rest is important. And for first responders, like they have, 4 days on, 4 days off, the rotating shift of like 2 days day shift, 2 days night shift. And it's like this very confusing and very pretty much unpredictable time or schedule. And so therefore, I ask them to practice, to pause, the practice of pausing and sitting still for a minute. We start with that and being able to just ground themselves and breathe. And that's self-care. We start with that. Normalizing pausing and resting for 1 minute and showing yourself compassion. We start with that. Because like if I tell them sit down for 10 minutes, that's a lot. It's so unnerving for them. So instead of like grounding, helping them ground their nervous system, they get more anxious because they're trying to do something that they're not familiar with. So I ask them to pause and practice pausing for 1 minute and breathing. And with that, like that moment that they pause for 1 minute, I remind them that's self-love. And it's better to love yourself and show yourself a lot of love so that in that 1 minute, you can reset, ground your nervous system, and then go share that love to other people, right? The public needs you. So if you want to keep helping other people and continue loving what you do, give yourself that 1 minute. We start with that. And they love a challenge. So they're like, well, I'm going to sit for like 2 minutes. Okay, great. You said that. Right? So it's that, and I tell them that's mindfulness right there. And being mindful, it's not meditation. It's a practice of being in the here and now. And with that practice of 1 minute pausing and breathing, you're practicing being in the here and now. And with that, I also try to explain to them that being in the present moment and doing what you need at this moment, right? Just staying present. Right, because we can get stuck, and I see this with a lot of them. And a lot of my clients, even though they're not first responders, we get stuck in the future, right? You understand this? Like, we get stuck in the future, we get anxious, and we can't do anything about the future, right? Because it's in the future, so we can't do anything about that. And then we get stuck and ruminate about the past, right? And we can't do anything about that because it had already happened, and that only just makes us sad. Right. So let's focus on the here and now. Once they find themselves, and I tell them this, like notice, once you find yourself getting antsy or anxious because you're thinking about the future, hasn't happened yet, reel yourself back in the present moment. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? And right now, does that mean you need to take a nap? You need to take a bathroom break? You need to rest or go outside and take a breather for 2 minutes? What do you need right now? Yeah. Like, oh, my belly hurts, or maybe you need to see a doctor. Let me just go make that. Like that one thing, bring yourself back into the present moment. That's self-love, right? Like being mindful of what I need in this very moment, in this very present moment, right? That's self-love. And then we're able to practice that on a regular basis. Then we go into okay, let's tap into making a list of activities that bring you joy. Like, what are the things that bring you joy? Because once you know how to pause for 1 minute or 2 minutes and then being able to stay in the present moment, then you'll be able to recognize, oh, I'll enjoy hiking, right? And then you tend to remember those activities that bring you some happiness because you're not caught up in survival mode anymore. You get glimmers of living, and life is meant to be lived. Right. And that, again, that is if you allow yourself love. It sounds so simple. It doesn't have to be hard. Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes for these professionals who are always on the go, that practice of pausing, staying in the present moment, and then, going back to understanding what made them happy in the past and bringing that back into their lives, that's a big thing for them. It seems so simple, but with stillness comes wisdom. And sitting still for 1 minute and breathing, and then increasing that time every month up to a point wherein you can sit still for 20 minutes and reflect and just breathe, right? That's like living. That's your self-love. That's your self-care. And we start with that. Not like, okay, let's travel to Puerto Rico for a week, or go to a retreat because that's self-care, or go to a spa for one whole day. Like, those are great, right? But then sometimes even when you find yourself in those places on vacation in the spa, your mind is still very places, right? You're not present. Yep. You're anxious about work. You're anxious about somebody else. It's like, so let's practice the 1 minute for yourself, right? And move in that 1 minute, not just survive. Because again, life is meant to be lived, not to be survival mode for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're helping them build sustainable practices over time that they can call on themselves anywhere at any time, right? Like going on these trips, taking these breaks, like they're wonderful. It's beautiful to have some of these experiences and they go by, right? Like we can't hold on to them the same way that you can teach somebody to have that. I mean, I'm hearing you're giving them back control over the time that they're being intentional about. Like, I'm going to give myself 1 minute of my own focus and attention to recenter my nervous system, build this practice so that in a month I can sustain this for 20 minutes and do something that brings me joy that I haven't even thought about in years.
Yes, exactly. You wrapped it
Beautiful.
up with the really short way. Yeah, it's perfect. Yes, exactly.
And, like you said, it's like the basics, right? Like just giving the basics of giving ourselves time. But when you're somebody who spends your whole career and time and energy thinking and caring about other people, doing that for 1 minute does sound hard. It does sound kind of uncomfortable. And building that tolerance over time is something that's going to be a life skill, right? Like that's a life skill to be able to tap into your own nervous system and breathe for a little bit so that you can reset.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. You do phenomenal work. Thank you for what you do. I mean, and with so much passion, I imagine your clients are very happy with you and the experience that they have for this safe place.
Because I've been there. I remember after I was assaulted, like the lawyers wanted me to go see therapists and I tried those and I didn't understand what they were telling me. They were throwing me CBT. I didn't know it was CBT back then, right? And I'm just like, no, that doesn't work. No, that this, and I went to 2 different therapists back then. It didn't resonate with me, right? I've learned so much how to just go, go, go. I had my own suicidal thoughts, right? And at one point in my life, all I wanted was to sleep, right? But I was so busy. And I was just I had so many things in my mind. I couldn't relax my nervous system. And I was just I wanted to sleep. At one point, I was I had weed. I had marijuana back then, and I smoked all my marijuana. I drank this bottle of disgusting vanilla vodka, and I took all my sleeping pills because I was I just want to sleep, right? Not understanding that, God, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore, right? But I just wanted to sleep. And then I woke up the next day with a really bad hangover, and I'm just oh, I'm alive. I can do something. And what did I do? After that incident, I went to Barnes and Noble and started devouring self-help stuff, right? And those are great. Self-help is great. Right? We have to understand it. But what we truly need is to be able to process those feelings that we have been holding on to. And, instead of numbing it and suppressing them and distracting ourselves from it. So that's why I'm I say I do what I do because I've been there, I understand it, and also know the power of the inner work, the inner healing, and opening ourselves up in a safe environment, right? In a safe space wherein we can process and unpack the events and also the feelings, the felt experiences that we had.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate your vulnerability. I think it's going to really allow people to really resonate and not feel alone and have hope. There's a lot more you can do, and you don't have to stay in this position. There's a lot of help out there. We just have to be open to seeking it and giving ourselves that attention. So I really appreciate that, Majet.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And, and things are changing, right, Kira? It's changing. Yeah. It's, the stigma on mental health is lessening, right? I mean, we still have a lot of work to do with that to really make it normal or normalize talking about it. But it's changing. There's a lot of hope.
Yeah, it's going in the right direction. I mean, this is the best time for us to be alive in all of history, right?
Yes, I like that. Exactly.
And so what's coming up next for you in your practice? I know you have a lot of organizations. If you can kind of share with the listeners more about what you do and what you're offering.
So what's coming up for me? So I have support groups, so for first responders and medical professionals. And that's normally in the fall. In September. So right now I'm trying to get more people into the fall support group. And I am planning on getting certified or licensed to do psychedelic-assisted therapy
Oh, Majet. Oh, you just hit my heart because that is my life goal. That is phenomenal. Where are you doing this at?
There is a Philadelphia organization called Sound Mind.
Yes.
You know, you know,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm a big
Oh,
fan
I
of
love
them.
this.
It's not everywhere yet, but people are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Programs are out there. So I'm super excited
Yeah.
about that. It's really expensive, but also, I mean, it's worth it. And I think
Yeah.
that it is such a beautiful tool. I guess you can call plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
tool, like psilocybin. It's something that I will really change mental health and really help people
Mm.
talk about emotions and feelings. And that's what
Yes.
I want. Then, sometimes I'm going to need some help from, plant medicine that can help people take off all the blocks and the walls and talk about feelings. So that's
Oh my
my plan.
gosh.
That's what's coming out. So I'm glad that you're
That
excited about it.
is That's super exciting. Oh my God. We're going to definitely have to have you back on for another episode just talking about psychedelics and trauma and different things. That is so near and dear to my heart. And I know that
Wow.
program, and I was actually going to do it. I'm going to do it actually, I think in a year or two. It was just not the right timing in my life right now, but that is definitely, I truly believe, the wave of mental health is just finding plant medicine and healing in that way. I'm so thrilled. I wish I knew this an hour ago. We could have talked about that more. That's super exciting though. Can you share with the listeners where they can reach out to you, how they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Sure. You can find me on social media at Philly Trauma Counselor. And if you want to hear all about mental health and first responders, so you can follow me there. And if you are interested in women empowerment, women education, and women events, I own Diva Girl Tribe, and you can follow us on social media at Diva Girl Community. And we're having a conference coming up in May. So I hope we see some of you there.
Awesome. And I have been to one of your events called She Means Biz. It was like a business conference for women entrepreneurs and having that. So it was incredible. I mean, you do so much amazing things in the community in all these different ways. So thank you for being you. I think it's just incredible, all of the work that you do. And really, thank you so much for being on today. It's been a pleasure talking to you and like learning more about your story.
Thank you for giving me the space to share my story, to show up as my true authentic self, and you appreciating it and accepting me for who I am. So thank you, Kira, for allowing me to be me in your space, a safe space.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I think we're good. I think it's a wrap. That was awesome.